Hey guys, Boss and Ramos. This Sunday night, the Dolphins lost to the Los Angeles Chargers, 23-17. Very unfortunate loss for the Miami Dolphins. First and foremost, just past 2 weeks, lack of offensive output. Understand guys are hurt, but every team is dealing with injuries. You can't make that the go-to excuse. And on top of that, defenses are finally figuring out what is the best way to stop Tua. Unfortunately for the clips, I didn't get enough in terms of showing that, but we're going to get into some clips real quick. But forewarning, it's not very good for the Dolphins. We can start with this Mike Williams catch that don't know how it doesn't end up being offensive PI, but there he is once again getting a toe-tapping touchdown. Quick highlights here for you guys. This is probably one of the craziest plays I've ever seen in a while. It's a fumble recovered by Tyreek Hill, and he takes it to the grip for about 60 yards. I'm not sure how that's scored in fantasy. I understand he gets a 60 yards rushing, but yeah, confusing. Austin Eckler getting into the end zone for 6. By this point, that was right before the half. This is right at the beginning of the third quarter. Big sack by Jalen Phillips, called for roughing the passer. Absolute BS, honestly. Next Dolphins drive, if I'm not mistaken, Tyreek Hill, wide open touchdown. That was pretty much all the offense for the Dolphins. We'll get into those stats in a sec. But let's go over the team stats and so on and so forth. So we have passing first downs. Dolphins had 14. Los Angeles Chargers had 24. Passing first downs. Dolphins had 6. Chargers had 16. Both teams had 6 rushing first downs. 2 first downs from penalties for both sides. Third down efficiency. Dolphins were 3 of 11. Chargers were 9 of 18. That's a big difference maker right there. And then Chargers were 1 of 2 on fourth down. Dolphins didn't attempt anything on fourth down. Total plays, 49 Dolphins, 78 Chargers. Pretty big. Total yards, 219 for the Dolphins, 432 for the Chargers. Both teams had 11 drives. Yards per play, Dolphins averaged 4.5. Chargers averaged 5.5. Yards passing, 127 for the Dolphins, 350 for the Chargers. Completion, we'll get into those when we get into the individual stats. No turnovers for either side. Time of possession, 20 minutes, 22 seconds for the Dolphins, 39 minutes, 38 seconds for the Chargers. Man, tough loss. In terms of standings, Dolphins didn't move up, didn't move down in terms of the playoff standings. Currently still at the 6th seed. Bengals are 8-4 or 9-4. Yeah, 9-4 because they played earlier today. They hold the top wild card spot. Dolphins are at 6. Jets are at 7, if I'm not mistaken. Not too crazy about the standings right now. Buffalo is still leading the division, 10-3. Dolphins 8-5. New York 7-6. New England 6-6. Has a game Monday night. In terms of the AFC West, the Kansas City Chiefs are 10-3. Chargers are 7-6. Vegas Raiders are 5-8. Denver Broncos 3-10. Russell Wilson almost died today. Crazy. So let's talk about the game before we continue on the stats. Just couldn't get the offense going. And that was the moral of the story last week. Another thing is how the defense played the Dolphins. The defense was very physical on the wide receivers. Pretty much jamming them excessively on the line of scrimmage. Finally, to some point, it was called on late in the game, but too little too late to be enforced by the referees. But not here to complain about it in terms of, this is the reason why we lost. Dolphins lost because they just couldn't get the offense going, to be honest. Defense was doing all right. And you're like, well, Austin, you showed the highlight of the Chargers doing so good offensively. Yeah, but that was through the course of an entire game. against one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. And he played really well too, Justin Herbert. I mean, Dolphins were throwing everything at him, anything that they could. And for the lack thereof, Dolphins couldn't actually apply pressure. It seems like he was just striving in it, which is, he's come a long way since the last time Dolphins played him in the rookie season, if I'm not mistaken, in 2020. Just Dolphins threw everything at him, and it was very uncomfortable for him. This time he was able to just find guys, just getting hit every single time he threw the ball, and he was able to just make things happen. Offensively, like I mentioned, just couldn't get it going. The linebackers were just playing kind of shallow, or my bad, they're playing pretty deep, just backing up and not letting them get what the Dolphins' bread and butter has been all season. Is just that gap right behind the linebackers, which has been troubling them for the last 2 weeks. And now that Buffalo's probably seeing this, I know they're going to try to attack that as much as possible. We'll see what happens there. But let's get into some stats. We'll go more into stuff about this game. So we have Tua. He went 10 of 28, 145 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, sacked twice for a loss of 18 yards. Justin Herbert went 39 of 51, that's a lot, 367 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, sacked for 4 times for a loss of 17 yards. Should have been sacked 5 times for a loss of like almost like 27 or something like that. Oh, man, that was a bogus call. Jalen Phillips clearly tried putting his hands out to brace himself and not put his entire body weight on Justin Herbert. Luckily, nothing really resulted of that drive for the Chargers. I think the Dolphins were able to stop him at some point. But it's still the fact of a lot of time was taken off, which another moral of the story. Either way, rushing, Dolphins, Raheem Mostert, 11 carries, 37 yards. Tua had 3 carries, 28 yards. Jeff Wilson had 4 carries, 26 yards. Jeff Wilson was doing really good. I understand he had that fumble, but it turned into points for the Dolphins at some point. But he got hurt. He suffered a hip injury. Not too sure on the status of him, but he did not come back into the game after the injury happened. So that kind of tells you everything you need to know. Savon Ahmed got into the game, 1 carry, 1 yard. Los Angeles Chargers, Austin Eckler had 15 carries, 45 yards, 1 touchdown, long of 12. Joshua Kelly had 4 carries, 29 yards, longest of 22. When he started busting out those runs, I was like, oh god, this is gonna be a long day, and it was. Justin Herbert, 4 carries, 8 yards. And then for the Miami Dolphins receiving, Tyreek Hill was the leader, 4 receptions, 81 yards, 1 touchdown, long of 60 off of 10 targets. Tough. Chargers defensive backs were playing the receivers very well, and to the point that it was just too much for them to handle. Honestly, this was a coverage that the Dolphins haven't seen all season. So Chargers brought in their master game plan, and I know it was tough last week, but I think this was a more tougher defensive outing. I think they posted the same amount of points that they did last week too. So it is what it is. Waddle was in and out of the game a lot. 2 receptions off of 31 yards off of 4 targets. Cedric Wilson had 2 receptions, 19 yards. Raheem Mostert, 1 reception, 7 yards. Trent Sherfield, 1 reception, 7. Mike Gesicki was targeted twice. Alec Ingold was targeted once. They called that an incompletion. Okay, on the broadcast they made it seem like if it was a completion. Mike Williams was the leading receiver for the Chargers. 6 receptions, 16 yards, 1 touchdown, longest of 55. Off of 6 targets, no drops. Good job, Mike Williams. Good for fantasy, bad for the result of this Dolphins game. Keenan Allen had 12 receptions, 92 yards, off of 14 targets. Austin Eckler, 8 receptions, 59 yards. Joshua Palmer, 4 receptions, 53 yards. Gerald Everett, 5 receptions, 28 yards. Stone Smart, 1 reception, 8 yards. Joshua Kelly, 1 reception, 6 yards. Trey McKitty, 1 reception, 5 yards. DeAndre Carter, 1 reception for no yards. Fumbles, Jeff Wilson had a fumble, and Tyreek recovered it. That was the touchdown run. They don't really give the stats on that one, but that was about a 60-yard recovery run. Justin Herbert fumbled and recovered his own fumble. It was on the goal line too, which if the Dolphins were able to recover that, that would have made the deficit only 6 points instead of 9. So would have made a big difference. Very unfortunate. Sorry I couldn't get that clip, but yeah, he fumbled on second and goal. So, you know, there's certain things in this game that really could have, if they gone a little bit different, could have really helped out the Dolphins. But it's how the cookie crumbles, unfortunately. Jerome Baker, 11 total tackles, 6 solo, 1 sack, 2 tackles for a loss, 1 QB hit. Christian Wilkins was flying all over the field for a big man, respectively. 9 total tackles, 6 solo, 1 sack, 2 tackles for a loss, 1 QB hit. Eric Rowe, he left the game, but he had 8 total tackles, 7 solo, 1 sack, 1 tackle for a loss, 1 QB hit. Jalen Phillips had a sack, 2 tackles for a loss, 1 QB hit. Should have had 2 sacks. Andrew Van Ginkel had a tackle for a loss. Bradley Chubb had 3 QB hits. And that's all the important key stats for the Dolphins. Kenneth Murray was the leading tackler, 7 total, 6 solo. Drew Tranquil, 5 total, 4 solo. 2 pass deflections, 1 QB hit. Sante Samuel had a pass deflection. Kyle Van Noy had a sack, 2 tackles for a loss, and a QB hit. Michael Davis had 2 pass deflections. Morgan Fox had a sack, a tackle for a loss, QB hit. And Chris Rump II had a QB hit. Punt returns, DeAndre Carter had 2 punt returns for 23 yards. The first one, he got absolutely blown up by Elijah Campbell. Second one, big return, but didn't mean much for them. Jay Sanders went 1 for 1 on field goals, 2 for 2 on extra points. Longest of 55. That was the one that brought the Dolphins within 6. And then Cameron Decker, 3 for 3 on field goals, 2 for 2 on extra points. Longest of 33 for the field goals. Thomas Morstead had 7 punts, 327 total yards, and 4 of which were in the 20, and the longest of 55. J.K. Scott had 4 punts, 176 yards, and then the longest was 55 yards. And that's all for the stats. So this is a very unfortunate road trip for the Dolphins, and they do come back home to Miami tomorrow, and then they travel right up north to Buffalo to be in a cold game against division leader, a team that really wants to face them right now, because as much as Buffalo hasn't looked good, they're still winning games. Dolphins haven't looked good, they're losing games. It's very unfortunate how the tides have turned for the Dolphins. But there's a few things to glimmer at here. Defense looked pretty good. I'm not a fan of all the calls on both sides of the ball, but mostly the defense, you know, as much as they were applying pressure, they just weren't able to get there a lot. And then just the Austin Eckler reception that was like 19 yards that put him on the 1 yard line, and then he rushes it in for the touchdown. Dolphins had 3 pass rushers and just dropped everyone back into the end zone pretty much off of pretty much almost 20 yards away from the goal line. Like, I think there needs to be a little bit a difference of standing on the defensive side of the ball. You know, in that situation, either rush more people or don't drop everyone into the red zone, into the end zone, just covering the goal line. Don't really know what the thought process was there, and let the guy slip out, and boom, he gains a bunch of yardage, setting him up for an easy rushing touchdown. Offensively, past 2 weeks, the middle of the field is not open. 49ers were able to cover it, expose the Dolphins for pretty much what their bread and butter was, and the Los Angeles Chargers picked it up and ran with it, and 99% sure the Buffalo Bills will be doing that too. Now, I understand Jalen Waddle's been dealing with a nagging injury. That, you know, is a big difference. You know, and then on top of that, Tyreek gets hurt throughout the game. So 2 of your top playmakers dealing with some knickknacks here and there. It's hard. But I'm not going to say too much about that, because I know the Chargers throughout the entire season were basically dealing without Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, and they were still able to make things work. So something's got to find a way to work. Jeff Wilson going down, that was very unfortunate because when he was running the ball, he was very assertive with his runs. One thing I want to point out is have a special fuck you to one of the offensive linemen from the Los Angeles Chargers, and that goes to Foster Sorrell, number 73, their right tackle. It seemed like this dude was jumping off the line like a lot throughout the game before the ball was even snapped. I don't know if I was seeing things, but